This is Creepy and Geeky. Welcome. I'm your host, Robert, and today is a special Christmas Day episode. On this episode, I will be talking about Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 through 5, and who better to be guests for this than my kids, Harrison and Katrina. Welcome back to the
Hello.
show, guys.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
You
Hi.
stepped on my intro, you ginormous
Sorry.
jackass.
You paused.
True to
I thought you
form.
were done.
True to form.
You guys always mess it up somehow. Not like me, the seasoned pro at this point.
Hey, we were here in the beginning.
You were here in the beginning, and then you guys promptly left. So,
Well,
Not for lack of trying.
we stopped talking about Christmas movies and I lost interest.
well, we are back on the Christmas beat. We
Finally,
Yeah,
it just took a year.
yeah. I bought the Vestron Video Collector Series version of the Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 through 5, and I pestered my kids into joining me again to talk about these movies because we had such a fun time talking about the first two movies. I figured we would possibly have a good time talking about these three, and none of us had watched these before, so this was an all new experience for us.
Nope.
Mhm.
And oh boy, it was an experience.
We
I'll
had
tell you
some
that.
we had some misses and we had some hits.
Here's my thing. I don't think any of them hit. I think this whole series is a trash fire.
Well,
From
yes.
1
so
through 5.
everything
it's
everything is
I
relative.
agree with that.
Everything is relative. So, I mean, if
No.
if it hits the high water mark of part 2, then we can just go high from there.
See, I still think number one's the best one.
Number
In
one's
a lot of ways,
fantastic.
Yes.
number one's the best one. Number two has some charm to it. It's hampered by the fact that it's like half a movie because
Yeah.
half of the rest of the movie is just like literally lifted from the first one. And so these go in a different direction, sort of. So we'll just jump right into it. Number 3, which is called Better Watch Out. This one is the last one to be connected to the first two movies, the Ricky and Billy saga. And we have Ricky Caldwell again, this time played by Bill Moseley, and he's in a coma from the events of the last movie where he was shot. And we have this girl who is being part of the study. She's blind, but she's psychic. And so this doctor's using her to connect to Ricky, to, I guess, to probe his mind or something like that, to see what he's thinking while he's in his coma. It's not super clear, but again, it's a doctor who is just doing some stupid shit, just trying to do things his way and thinking that he can get into the mind of a psycho, with predictably disastrous results. This movie for me is the goddamn dullest movie. They took what could have been a fucking great premise of Ricky waking up. I mean, the sight of seeing Ricky woken up out of his coma with a fucking, like, his brain exposed in a jar. Like, that's such a great campy, like, look that it should have gone nuts, and it is just boring as shit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that I agree. I think that this movie had a lot going for it and it was somewhat disappointing. I think that the psychic angle was dubious, but it's a horror movie trope, and so I'm fine with it. But the thing that I found most disappointing about it is that it's a Silent Night movie and it's got Ricky in it, but he doesn't ever don the Santa suit.
No.
He never puts on the hat at the very least. He I thought so. There's a point in the film where Ricky's on his rampage and he assaults a mechanic who's wearing a Santa hat.
Yeah. And has a Christmas sweater.
And he assaulted someone who had a Christmas sweater too.
Yeah.
But so before the revelation later in the movie that red reactivates his murderous tendencies,
Right.
I thought that he was collecting clothing. Like I thought that he was going to
Yeah.
be in a red sweater, and then he was also going to be wearing the red Santa hat, and
Yeah.
then it was going to be like because they have a moment where his hat is like barely covering.
There's a hat. There's like a beanie covering his bowl.
And I'm like, why wasn't that the Santa hat?
Yeah.
Like why where in the decision process of the writing and costume direction of this movie did they not decide to have him get back inside the suit? Because that was the whole thing. That was the whole thing about the first movie was that he was the Santa killer.
Yeah.
And so I get that like he was like messed up in the head and like he wasn't all quite there. So of course like he might not have his whole faculties, but again, like he might remember the last thing he did, which was kill a lot of people in a Santa suit.
Yeah. There's just so many there were so many potential moments that just got let down.
The action was non-existent. I remember specifically a scene where I just was sitting dumbfounded with my mouth agape, where Ricky was pressing the gun up against Laura's brother, and I could tell that neither of them were putting any effort into it. Her brother wanted to die, and Ricky didn't want to kill him. So how did he fall unconscious? The gun was just kind of in between them, and there was no effort being put in either way, and it was just there was no true effort in any regard of this movie. And yeah, it was just extremely dull. There was so many points where I was just sitting there looking at the screen because I had to.
Well, okay, Katrina. What what did you feel, or what did you think of the movie?
I'm gonna be real. It was so boring that I had to read a Wikipedia entry, like the plot entry about it afterwards, because it did not hold my attention. Like I looked up when they said that she was blind. I looked up when other things happened. Sorry. I literally forgot like half of the movie. But like
no, and again, this movie did the same thing that the last one did. It put in scenes from the first movie to like, kind of like him remembering stuff or when she was in his mind or whatever. And he kills a guy in a Santa suit. That's his first kill in this movie. The guy who's like in the Santa suit that's pestering him, like and making fun of him and everything. And yet he still doesn't put on the Santa suit. No, he escapes the hospital in his hospital gown. And it's like there's so many moments of just like,
you are so right. I forgot that he literally had a Santa suit right from the very beginning and he didn't put it on.
Yeah. So he had so many moments where there were times where he could have done things that would have made it at least moderately more interesting and I mean I'm saying this movie would not have been that much more interesting, but the fact that they did things that didn't help it like that were just bleh, just so dumb.
A connecting factor between this one and the next one that we're going to talk about is a genuine lack of like adherence to the tropes of the franchise.
Yeah.
And
up until this point, yeah. Yeah, it's like they went.
Can we
they,
also
like,
talk about how Laura only had one scream? Every time she screamed, it was the same one. I feel like it had to have been dubbed in because it was incredible at the accuracy that she could give each scream the same pitch and length.
Yeah.
I
No, it's
wouldn't
just
doubt that they did that.
Oh my God. There was something else about this movie. Sorry. This was the first one I watched, so I'm having to remember the details of what I wanted to talk about.
no. Go ahead.
This one, uh, there were so many points in this movie where the they had a music track. They had a music track. They would
Yeah.
cut it in every now and again. But there were scenes that needed music and there was none. The
Yeah.
point that I can think most clearly about is the moment when they're talking about what they're going to do and Ricky's outside and like Granny's not here. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then like the girlfriend is up against the door and she's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if he's still out there. Where's your car? And then boom, his hands come through the wall and
Right.
there's no music and there's no tension. None of the actors move like they're actually scared. And
Yeah,
it immediately takes me out of it because I'm like, well, if they're not scared, I'm not scared.
yeah, that was
Obviously
one of
they
the
don't
scenes I
care.
looked up at because his arm comes through the door. She's being like nearly strangled, being held back. And then her boyfriend is just like, oh no, I'm gonna slowly walk and go help and
Yeah,
not have
he's just
any
kind of like
emotion. And
he's just
she's
gonna
just standing against the door like, uh, it's
there's a
like
lot
there's
of
no,
I'm not trying to interrupt.
it's okay. No, I, it's fine.
Yeah. It's there's so many moments in this film with a misunderstanding of how to execute tension.
Right.
There's another moment where he's upstairs and like it's been a while that he's been upstairs and it's like, Chris, are you okay upstairs? Chris. And then he just kind of walks around the corner with a gun. And he's like, hey, I found this upstairs. And then they walk downstairs and then that's it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, like you could have built to a scare. You could have built to like them climbing up the stairs, like trying to find Chris, and then Chris pops out of the out of a door suddenly with the gun, and he's like, "Hey guys, I found a gun. Let's get out of here!" Like actually having energy in
Yeah.
this film,
Yeah. No,
and
everybody's just walking through this film. Like everybody's like obviously like bored. And it just translates right to the audience. Like I was just like, this movie is just terrible. There's so much potential to this movie that they just left on the floor. And it just like, it's like, why? Like, why? After the first two movies were what they were, this is the first direct to video sequel. The other two, I guess, went to movie. I may be wrong, but this one was direct to video. These next three were all direct to video, and they just fumble what could have been just a fun thing. And maybe it was that they were trying to get away from the history of the first two, because the first two had such a bad rep because of the Santa Claus killing and everything. And so they were just like, okay, well, let's just get away from that then, and we'll do this other story. But it's just boring. That's the greatest sin this movie has, is just that it's boring. It's
yeah.
just
If you're
it's
gonna
not.
make more, you either go all in or you don't.
Yeah.
And
And the next
and
two
it,
movies, as much as I think they're not great either, they actually went for it in both of them, and they're both like, went in wild directions. And well, especially the next one. The next one just went in a completely way wackadoodle direction. And we can get into that now, because number three is not worth talking about anymore because it's just boring.
yeah.
um but number four, the initiation, brings in a whole new thing. It's not, these next two movies are not connected to the first three at all. Whole new people, whole new storyline. And this one is a reporter who wants to do a story on this woman who spontaneously combusted, and so she wants to, it's 1990, and so women still aren't getting their due, because it's the end of the 80s and stuff, and still getting treated like crap, and not like they're not today either, but um but it's they make a point of it in this one because she's trying to become a reporter, and all the guys are just like, no, 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 don't forget that. You don't go make coffee.
It's a film
Literally.
rooted in 90s feminist,
or like pre-90s, feminism.
Yeah, pre-90s feminism. Like, it's, for what it's worth, it's current for the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So so she gets sucked into this cult. Not that she wants to be, but she gets sucked into this cult as she's trying to investigate this woman who spontaneously combusted and half of her body burned. And so this one was directed by Brian Usna, who's best known as the director of Bride of Reanimator, Society, and he's known for more body horror style stuff. And it's definitely some body horror in this one. This one was like
body horror. I'm just gonna say that up front. I didn't like the second one or the fourth one because of the body horror aspects. I hate it.
I didn't like the fourth one because I don't like bugs. And this one had a lot of bugs, and it was gross and skeeved me out. So it was just like, oh no, like this one was a hard watch for me because it was weird. The body horror stuff was, funky, and the bug stuff was just weird. And they were doing all this stuff that was supposed to be about Lilith and about feminism. They were like trying to, like, this coven was trying to like bring her in to make her a stronger woman against, and she doesn't need a man and all this stuff, and that's great and everything, but they were making her dependent on them, and it was just all,
it kind of had mixed messaging.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but
the men sucked and the woman sucked by the end of the movie,
and it was just like, I don't know, but at least this one was more interesting. And I think that at least the lead, the Kim was her name, the reporter. She was more interesting as a character and as a person than the last one. The last one's characters were all just, and that's what sucks too, is like the last one, Bill Moseley played Ricky. At that point, Bill Moseley had been in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, where he played this character named Chop Top, and it was a wild and crazy character. And I think he, by making him pull all the way back, and he's probably most well known these days for being in Rob Zombie's Firefly family trilogy of House of Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, and the third one that I can't remember the name of. But anyway, so he plays one of the major characters in that. He's Otis. So so to see him just be like really like barely say anything at all, and to be a
Laura.
Laura, it's just so dumb.
And happy new year,
at least in this new one. So in this one, we got the actress who plays Kim. We also have Clint Howard, who played the character named Ricky in this one, which has no connection to the Ricky in the last one, in the last several. They're just reusing the name.
I couldn't tell if that was them just phoning in a Ricky for this movie, or if that was part of the script originally. It was very difficult to tell.
And this one's set at Christmas and has a few Christmas scenes, but it's so very tenuous.
Well, so this movie introduces a little wrinkle into the Silent Night, Deadly Night canon, in that this movie takes place in a sub-canon of the Deadly Night, the Silent Night, Deadly Night, because during this film, Ricky comments on watching Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 on the TV,
Oh yeah,
And-
yeah. It's
and
actually
says-
playing on the TV.
and says, haha, Santa Claus killer.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so that implies then that in this universe, that Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, and presumably then 1 and 2 are films in this world. It's the same as ours. And so regarding that, that also has implications for the 4th movie. Or no, sorry, oh god, what is it? The 6th? No, 5th.
No, 5th.
Okay,
movie.
yes, the 5th movie. Because things happen in that movie that also kind of throw a wrinkle into it as well. I don't know if you guys picked up on it the same way I did. But so, there's something in the 5th movie that I like. It was very short and I found very interesting.
Yeah,
I probably didn't catch it.
So anyway,
what's interesting about 4 and 5 is what's interesting about 4 and 5 is they are actually basically a duology of themselves. They are, because Kim survives number 4 and is in number 5 as the friend, I think just the friend of the mother of the character in this next one, and in number 5. And so, and then her, what's really weird. Okay, so
let's not even talk about that one yet. We got to talk about initiation. There's so much to talk about initiation before we move on to the toy maker.
All right, bring it.
So number 1, if people who've been listening for a while remember, I'm the body horror fan of this group. And I thoroughly enjoyed Initiation. It was a very good film. And
very good.
For body horror, it was all right. The special effects, I think it was done by a man called Screaming Mad George, if I remember credits correctly.
Screaming Mad George. Yep.
His effects were fantastic. There was a lot of creature effects as well as stop motion and a lot of kind of really good use of in-camera techniques that were really fascinating to watch. There's a point where her fingers kind of get all like twisted around each other, and then there's another point where like her body starts to cocoon and gets like very slimy. And then of course there's tons of creature effects regarding the bugs, because you get actual insects, but then you also get these like giant cockroaches that are on the wall, as well as this like weird slithery maggot thing.
Was some Kafka-esque imagery going on.
Ricky pulls out of like a vent on the roof of one building, and then that eventually goes inside somebody. It's a very strange, very weird film that has a very tenuous connection to Christmas. Honestly, it was probably not a Silent Night, Deadly Night film when it was originally conceived, but they added scenes afterwards.
So the director, I read that the director had, I guess, decided to pull back on the Christmas stuff because he didn't want it to be as tied to it, but later on said that he shouldn't have done that, that he should have made it more Christmas specific and kept it.
I would have loved to have seen what extra Christmas would have been injected into this movie, because
who knows where.
I cannot imagine. Because
Yeah.
there's a Christmas dinner, and then there's a later scene where they then attack the same house, and then there's the one point where he comments on the TV about a Santa Claus killer. That's the only times that I can think of. But yeah, there's a lot of weird. There's a lot of weird in this movie. There's a penis mask. There's a
I forgot about
that. There's a witch coven that is really into like flaming genitals. And it's a weird one, but I highly recommend it. It's this one honestly is worth more of a watch than Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Because if you've seen the clips of Part 2, you've already kind of seen the good parts of that movie. Whereas if you watch Initiation, like you're actually watching a good, like kind of very body horror centric, like witchy.
If you like body horror, sure.
Yeah.
But for those of us like myself and Katrina
There's a
who
lot
don't
of
really
bugs.
care
If you're
about body
squeamish
horror.
about bugs, do not watch. There's bugs crawling out of
Yeah.
mouths. There's bugs crawling out
Also,
of
if you don't like
multiple
things,
orifices.
I was gonna say multiple orifices. If you don't like that shit, don't watch it because that was
Yeah.
my main thing.
Yeah. It's gross.
So I like these movies because they gross me out. It's kind of the one of the only horrors that actually like gets me to kind of like cringe and like kind of want to look away from the screen. And
No,
so
yeah,
for me,
no.
that's the enjoyable part is like seeing something horrid on screen and going like, oh my God. And just because that it puts me into the world because I feel like a lot of horror sometimes takes me out and it's a little unbelievable. And so when it comes to body horror, though, I can just kind of
How
I
do
just
how
saw
do I'm
Katrina's
sorry,
face and
but
how's
how do legs turning into a cocoon put you into the fucking realistic world? That doesn't
because
happen.
the special effects and the practical effects, and that's another thing to commend about this movie is I don't think that there was much like CGI inside of this
I don't
film.
think there
Like it
was
was a
any CGI.
very like there was a
Yeah.
very incredible practical effects that were being featured in this film. And so for me, the thing that puts me into the universe of these films is how realistic they can get these effects. The cockroach on the wall looked fantastic. It looked like a cockroach. Like it looked like a massive cockroach.
It could have been a
Um,
cockroach just zoomed in.
like it could have been a cockroach and they
Yeah.
could have been doing some like miniature trickery and
Right.
like and that's the stuff that's fascinating whenever I watch these kind of films is that it's art watching a body horror film. Like you're watching people have to create these things and create these like mechanisms to make this movie get pulled off. And so I have to commend it and have to enjoy it. It's very fantastic.
No, and I'm not saying that the work that they did on the practical effects aren't bad or like are bad or anything like that. I think they're very good. I just it body horror just isn't my thing. Like I can deal with it once in a while, like with the Thing or other stuff like that. But I have never just been like, to me, it doesn't even gross me out or anything. It just isn't my thing. It's just not something that I care to watch mostly.
And what I will say is that this movie dials in pretty hard on it. Like it was very uncomfortable watching parts of this film.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely something that you have to kind of know and expect. I highly recommend watching the trailer. If you watch the trailer gives you a lot of information about what to expect, while also not revealing too much about the plot, honestly. In the retrospect of like watching the trailer and watching the film, which is something that cannot be said about the next film. Do not watch the trailer for the next film. It will tell you the whole plot. And so, but yeah, I highly recommend Initiation for people who are looking for their next body horror kick. It is definitely weird. Like you said, it's made by the same guy who made Society, which is also a very strange film. So just kind of know what you're going into. But definitely not a Christmas movie. But
no, I mean, but there's some good. There's at least one good Christmas scene, and it's towards the end.
Yeah.
The Kim is going to, on the orders of the coven, she's going to go kidnap her boyfriend.
Hey.
What?
That's like late spoilers. Let's not ruin it for
It's
everybody.
32 years. I'm sorry.
This is our show. Spoilers are a go here.
All right. All right.
So
it's been 32 years.
Anyway.
I think people have had enough time.
Regardless. So at the end, and Kim, on orders of the coven, has to go and get her boyfriend's brother, and they need to sacrifice the brother or she will spontaneously combust. They are like forcing her to do this. And so she goes and with Clint Howard's Ricky and goes to the house and coaxes the brother Lonnie out into the van and takes him away. Well, meanwhile, Ricky goes in and kills the mother and strangles the father with a with a string of Christmas lights from the tree. So I mean, in that instance, at least it's a fun Christmas kill there. It's one of like the only
I will
like
say that
Christmas
there's actually
kills
a
up to
really
this
great
point.
shot following that scene where there's the shot of his the brother trying to get out of the van
Yeah.
and him getting the door open and having
And
Ricky
then
jump into the
Clint,
van,
yeah,
but you can actually still see the flaming house in the background.
yeah.
Like that's a fantastic
No,
shot. Like it
it was a
actually
really good shot.
it was
Yeah.
really good shot composition, and you could tell that the car was moving too. And
Yeah.
so like it was somewhat of a stunt. And so it
Yeah.
was, I mean,
Yeah.
it was a
Altogether, it was a
fantastic,
great
it
yeah.
was a good moment. Like this movie's good. Like cannot overstate how much I actually enjoyed this film.
Well, so okay, so this leads to something that is very weird to me. Okay, so she takes Lonnie to the coven. The coven ties him up. They're about to sacrifice him. She's about to kill him. Not wanting to do it, and then she, manages to get away and get Lonnie away and everything like that. And at the end, after this woman has stolen you from your family and and your parents are now dead, and his parents are now dead, and she's like, oh yeah, come to me, I got you, everything's gonna be all right now. It's like, you just stole me, tried to kill me, and I'm just like, I'm surprised that this kid, like, he must be in shock. That's all I can say for this. It's just wild to me that like somebody would just be like, okay, yeah, I'll the person who stole me away and tried to kill me just now is comforting me.
We learn that it all has a happy ending in Silent Night, Deadly Night 5.
So, and that's what the funny thing is too, is now in Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, she is his caretaker, his guardian or whatever.
Yep.
So her and Lonnie are friends of this new mom and son in this movie. And
not only that, but I'm not sure if you're aware, but Ricky also makes an appearance inside the
I
film
saw that too. Yes,
as
Clint
a
Howard is
Santa.
back as a character named Ricky, but the Ricky in number 4 died. He was eaten by a bunch of the larvae. And
which means that we've introduced a new wrinkle into the Silent Night, Deadly Night canon. Now we've got 2 sub-canons where we've got one where the events of that movie went very differently, where Ricky was able to get out alive, and then another one where Ricky dies. And so it's just this kind
again,
of
this could be a different
moment.
Ricky, just played by Clint Howard again.
It's Ricky.
It's gotta be just Ricky. A quick nod.
If it's Kim, it's gotta be Ricky.
I mean, there's no reference to anything that happened in the last movie in this. She makes a small reference to it, and she's like, she says something to the effect of like, oh, things have been strange lately or whatever, or things are stranger than you think or whatever. And so that brings us to number 5, Katrina. Since you obviously didn't like 3 or 4, what did you think about number 5?
I thought it was better, but I thought I was really stupid. Like the fucking, I'm sorry, but like I think that only the first one is good. And then everything else was its own movie, just playing off of the name Silent Night, Deadly Night, because it was like trying to be a series, but tried too hard.
I will at least say the first 3 were trying to be, a series in a way, but yeah.
I definitely think that the 5th one had more into it. It had more content, more story than the 3rd and 4th one, but
right.
I still didn't like I'm gonna be real, of the 3, like 3, 4, and 5, I liked the 3rd one the most because it was the least stupid. It was boring, but it was the least stupid. I just that's all I got.
That's Katrina. She's always bringing the hot takes. Oh man, no. At number 5, I thought was interesting because it's got, it's more Christmas oriented. We're back on actual Christmas. We're back on actual
I was happy to see the
Christmas
return
killings.
of Christmas in these Christmas movies.
Right? The actual amount of Christmas. Yeah. We have a Santa Claus who's killing people. We have deadly
Santa Claus
toys.
killing people.
We have deadly toys, like super fucking deadly toys.
I thought it was awesome. I thought
that. Okay, so the sequence with the babysitter and her boyfriend, that whole sequence was just like crazy. That was some great effects work.
Great effects, great horror acting, great. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah,
good.
I just gotta say,
there was a lot of good camp in that scene.
Yeah, I don't know how the babysitter survived as long as she did, though. Like,
well, the army man literally gets
shot in the chest and like keeps fighting, and even after you think she's dead, she keeps showing up.
I anticipated that. Yeah, I mean, so okay. to preface the core concept of this film, because you didn't do this for this one yet. The core concept of this film was that there is a little boy named Derek who watched his father get attacked by a killer toy, or not father,
like his stepfather
or mom's boyfriend gets attacked by a killer ornament. And
which was addressed to the kid, though.
Correct.
That's what's even more
addressed
messed up.
To the kid. And so the father opens up his kid's present, or not the father, sorry, the boyfriend opens up Derek's present, and the present kills him. And Derek witnesses this whole thing, and it stuns him into silence. And I believe that is it a year later, or is it still that same Christmas?
I think it's still that same Christmas.
Okay. It's still that same Christmas.
No, because it's like just slightly later, because she's got cards on her bedside table that say condolences and stuff.
Right. Yes.
So,
oh my God. Okay. So yes, it's still that same Christmas, and so he's stunned into silence, obviously. And we're following Derek through his little misadventures of having to get through the Christmas season while also having this trauma. While at the same time that there is this mysterious other male figure who is paying attention to Derek, who seems to have had a past with his mother. And then there is another character that is introduced, a toy maker by the name of Joe Petto, and his son, Pino. If you're missing the illusions, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And basically the core concept is that Pino is a little weird in the head. He creates mass. In the beginning we are introduced to the idea that he creates mass, which is foreshadowing for later. And that Joe Petto has a very abusive relationship with his son for whatever reason. But I open up conversation about this film at this point because I feel like that's enough preface.
Yeah, no, the Joe Petto and Pino stuff is very heavy-handed, and when you get the twist at the end, it's not a very shocking twist. It's
spoiler alert, Pinocchio's a doll.
Yeah, Pino, his supposedly teenage son, is actually a robot.
He himself is a toy in the toy maker's film of killer toys,
and presumably he's the one who's been leaving the deadly toys on Derek's porch stop, because Joe Petto and his son, used to live in that house beforehand, and the son, Pino, wants to go back to that house.
Which, can we talk about how ridiculous that is as a plot point? Because when that was introduced,
I told you this film was stupid.
I was just like, is that really the whole reason why he's been sending these killer toys to this kid? Is there's no other motivation other than this used to be their house?
Well, no, it's not the only motivation, because you find out by the end he's wanting to kill this kid because he wants Derek's mother as his mom to replace the mom that was lost before,
Well,
because he's never had a mom.
He
So
he was so Pino was built because Joe Petto lost his wife in a car crash and his wife was pregnant. And so
right.
Joe Petto wanted a son. So he made a son.
Yes.
But the son he made was never quite the son he wanted. And so he abused him regularly. And that upset Pino so greatly that he sought a mom to create a new son for Joe Petto, but eventually changed his motivations to just wanting to be the mom's son because he didn't want Joe Petto to be his father anymore. But
at some point during the process of the movie, he kills Joe Petto and has created a Joe Petto face that he uses to go and like pretend to be him in a Santa suit. And
and realistically doesn't go on that much of a murder spree. He just he just walks into the house, kills the babysitter.
Again, is just going Derek. Back to that house. He's very specifically because it's the robot. He's very specifically trying to go after that damn kid.
It's a very strange situation because he has so many mixed motivations in this film because he wants to get a son for Joe Petto, who he has already killed at this point. He wants to be the son for someone, and he wants to kill that person's current son, which is Derek, because he wants to be that person's son. And so it's such a weird set of mixed motivations that is so convoluted by the time that you reach the climax of the film that you're kind of unsure of what even is happening, because there's also an even weirder point where he's trying to create a son with the mom that he wanted to.
There's it gets weirdly sexual there.
It gets very weirdly sexual in the climax of the film.
He's not really trying to create, but he's like humping her.
Yeah, also, and
it's very weird.
And there's just also a weird allusion to the fact that he doesn't have a dick and that he's a Ken doll, and it's just like, it's just so strange. It's such a strange film.
Katrina's over there going, stupid. This movie's stupid.
Stupid as fucking hell.
So, but the interesting thing about this movie too is it's saying some stuff about fathers and sons as well. Like not only just between Joe Petto and Pino, but also between Derek and this guy who shows up out of nowhere and is weirdly stalking this family at the beginning. And you're just like, the fuck is this guy's problem? Like he pretend like he's a store like a mall Santa or something like that, and he sees the mom and Derek come to the mall, and he's supposed to be on break, and it's supposed to be, this is where we meet Ricky as Santa. It's supposed to be Ricky's turn as Santa, but he's like, no, let me take your shift. I gotta do this. And so Ricky's like, yeah, whatever, dude. And so he goes out there, and Derek sits on his lap and is all quiet and everything. And when the mom's like, okay, well, let's just go, he holds on to Derek and is just like, no, like trying to force him to stay with him. And it's like weird and creepy. And it's not till much later in the movie that you find out that it's actually Derek's dad, who's been gone in the military for a number of like 6 years.
6 years.
And he wasn't sure that it was his kid. He thinks it's his kid because the time matches up from the last time he saw this woman. And it's just so bizarre. There's so many weird father son weird things in here. Like I'm not sure what the full subtext of this movie is trying to go for.
Whoever wrote this movie had trauma and portrayed it poorly.
Well,
I'm
we are not. No,
I'm just kidding.
I'm just saying. Let's preface this with, we are not professionals.
It felt like there was meant to be a message in this film that got so crisscrossed and like
Christmas crossed,
convoluted. That's dumb.
Dad laughed.
No one asked for that. It got so Christmas crossed that it just didn't amount to really anything by the end. And then also just weirdly left itself open for a sequel, as if they had earned it. Like as if by the end that they had earned it. And I was just left flabbergasted after watching it because I was just like, as much as the core concept of the film, a killer who uses toys to kill, like that is a good core Christmas movie concept, like Christmas
Yeah.
horror movie concept that really never saw its full potential.
Yeah.
And it just kind of left me wanting, because again, like when we talk about like these toys killing people, there's one kill towards the beginning, and then well, there's the kill of Derek's mom's boyfriend, and then we get just a rando who gets killed by one, and then we get some babysitters a little bit later, and then that's pretty much it. And then Joe Petto.
Yeah.
But we don't even see Joe Petto's death.
Yeah.
And so it, in terms of a horror movie, it's a very low kill count, and it doesn't use its concept very well by any means. Also, just to be completely clear, Joe Petto is not an innocent soul, because apparently he was using killer toys several years ago to maim children.
Yeah. True.
Like
True.
when his wife, or probably not when his wife was around. Oh, actually, right after his wife died. That's the plot point.
Yeah.
Is that a revenge against anybody who has children, because he never got to have a child, and so he just was going to kill every child in town.
Yeah. And somehow he managed to keep a store open that people would go to, and nobody ever heard about these crimes that he did.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that he was allowed to reopen a toy store.
Yeah.
But hey,
yeah,
it's the 90s.
It's some bizarre stuff. These movies came out back to back, 89, 90, 91. They were like one right after the other. Now, like I said, Brian Usna directed that number 4, and then he was a producer on number 5. And so there's because number 4 wasn't as Christmassy and everything like that, I think that there's supposition that he probably came back and was like, okay, let's make this really Christmassy. And so that's why it's got a lot more Christmas in it than the last two. It's just the other thing that I thought was interesting, going back to the whole Lonnie and Kim stuff, is that Lonnie ends up getting hurt by one of these toys, because he takes these roller skates that were again meant for Derek, and he takes them, because Derek threw them out because he's like, no, I don't want this crazy toy. And so Lonnie puts them on and ends up getting hit by a car when these roller skates, which are obviously being controlled, and they just go haywire. And so it's just, and then we get Kim back. It's this weird, like, it's like they were trying to make this weird connection between the two movies and continue this storyline. Like you said, it's left in a weird way that it could possibly go into a sequel, into a third part of this weird new trilogy that they were making. I don't know. I'm glad it stopped with this one, because as much as this one was interesting, like I saw somebody on Twitter the other day talk about how this one was the Halloween 3 of this series. And I'm just like, I can't fully agree. Now that I've watched this, I can't agree with that. Halloween 3 is a fucking awesome movie. That is a fun movie. It's bonkers. It doesn't have anything to do with the series. But at least it's a fun movie. This was dumb. This was so just weird. And as much as I appreciated the killer toys and everything, and don't get me wrong, that one sequence, the one with the babysitter and her boyfriend, I love that sequence. That sequence is awesome. The toys are killing and attacking, and just the practical effects are really great and everything. But that reminds me, in the beginning of the movie, the guy who we find out later is his dad. He's been buying toys from Joe Petto's store, and has been looking into it, because he knew that they were being controlled and had circuitry and all this other stuff and everything. So he gave this toy away to the motel manager or whatever. And he's like, hey, please let me stay one more night. Here's a cool toy. And this cool toy is a larva, which is a callback
So
to the
I was,
last movie.
yeah, exactly. Well, also the fact that it comes out of his eye is also
Yeah.
a callback to
Yeah.
Initiation. And so yeah, that whole sequence almost was just to serve as a
Yeah.
like
Like
homage to the
this
previous
shit
film.
really happened. Don't forget it.
Yeah.
And it was just another connection to like make these movies as part of this secondary like series of these, like to keep it going. So if there had been a third movie, I'm sure it would have been connected in some way to all of that as well. So yeah.
I will say, as I was Wikipedia browsing the plot summaries for these movies, I found out that there's a sixth film in this series, and it's a remake of the first
Hmm.
one, and it was
Yes.
made in 2012, and it's called Silent Night, and it looks just as stupid.
Well, I guess what we're covering next year.
Great.
Yeah, because I'm not coming back until then. Because
Oh my god, shut up. You're gonna come back before then.
well, no, like I
It,
said, I only talk about Christmas. So I only talk about holidays. You only get me on the Halloweens and the Christmas. So I mean,
oh, whatever. All right.
maybe I'm
Shut
Santa
up.
killer.
Before you even say anything else, shut up.
All right, guys. Oh, do you guys have anything else that you guys want to mention about these movies?
I just want to say that this is a fantastic series. I highly recommend everybody watch a few of these. And those few being number 1 and number 4. Uh, if you want to watch that one scene in number 5, watch that scene on YouTube. I'm sure it's there. And if you want to watch the good parts of part 2, all those clips are on YouTube. So just like watch the good parts. Watch the good parts because there are some good parts inside of these movies. There's some good camp, but definitely
I
not
think
worth the full watch. It's these movies. Just save yourself the effort of watching
I
3 at the very
I
least, because three is incredibly dull and
oh,
boring,
no, no,
and
no,
not a
no.
whole lot happens.
Katrina's coming back with that.
I quarter watched all 3 of those movies, and I still hated them. So don't waste your time. Don't listen to what my brother says. If you're a horror movie watcher like me, do not waste your time.
To be fair, there are people who
And if
love
you're a horror movie watcher like me, absolutely watch the first one and the fourth one, because they're worth a watch. The first, so
Hey,
like, to go back to our earlier opinions on the first two. So the first one is not the best horror film, but it does have a message, and it does at least stick true to its themes and deliver on a Santa Claus killer. And for that, I got what was advertised about that film. Part 2, you can skip part 2. You already seen part 1. That's part 2. I mean, it's like my dad said
part
earlier,
two,
is that part 2 is mostly
part 2 is a
film.
higher camp version of part 1. Like it just goes, it just amps everything up, and it's just silly on its own. Like here's my thing. Like I can't honestly recommend to anybody any of these movies. I think they are all just barely okay. They are all movies that I own, but will probably never watch again. Just because I will have no desire to ever, subject myself to them. I don't think they're necessarily bad. I just don't think they're very good either. So, you know, I know there's a lot of people that love the first two and like, some of these later three. Some people are really excited about having these on Blu-ray now that they're on Blu-ray, which is great. You know, I think they were worth watching at least once so I can experience it and go, hey,
Sure.
there was some interesting thoughts and ideas in some of these. I think that if they had done different things, they would have been better. But
we've got our merit badge. We've seen all 5, and I think that was worth it. And
yes.
I can put that on my sash now. But it's for me, if you're in the Christmas spirit and you've already watched Krampus and you're just looking for something else to fill that kick, I'm sure there's better options, but watch Silent Night, Deadly Night. Just do it. It's worth
I
the
can
good
recommend
time.
Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 at least. I will
Here's what I
recommend that
Here's
one.
what I suggest. Watch it with friends. We didn't
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that. We watched it
think
alone, which was
yeah.
not the way to watch these movies.
No.
When you watch it alone, you pay too much attention or you don't pay any attention.
Yeah.
And it just you're left with a very subpar experience because you're either left with poor plot or you're left with a glaze after.
So we end up watching
to
whenever I propose these to all of us, we usually end up watching them all separately. Sometimes Katrina and I will watch them together. And it's kind of hard just because of timing, because of work schedules and everything. We just got to fit them in when we can. And so, although it seems like most of us could have probably watched most of them today together. And but part of me would think that would be great, because then, yeah, sure, we'd have the communal aspect of making fun of them, or having a good time with it and everything. But like, this is why I always like try to do it separately, is because if we do that, then I always feel like we're going to lose content for the show, because we're all going to be like busting on it and laughing at it. So what I propose is, potentially in the future, is that maybe we watch them together, but we record while we're watching them. And
That'd
so
be
then
lovely.
that way
I'd love to do a watch
we'll
party.
do basically commentary, like a fun commentary with all of us.
I'd love to do that.
Watching something and, having a good time with that. So
live opinion.
So that could be something fun we can do in the future. So stay tuned.
I'd be
for
down
that.
for that. That would be.
Yes.
I've been kicking that around I've been kicking that idea around in my head for a while, just trying to figure out what we could do that for. So we will potentially do that. Sounds like you guys are on board. So, all right. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on. Do you guys want to tell people where they can find you online, Katrina?
You can find me on Twitter at rockmonkey, RCKMNKY. And I have a pinned tweet there that has all of my other socials.
All right. And Harrison, I know you're a social media hermit and don't have any social media, so nobody can find you anywhere.
Correct.
So
no, I get put into a Christmas tree shaped freeze chamber, and then they just take me out whenever they want to do a holiday podcast, and I just watch the movies and then I go back in. So it was great talking to you guys, but I think it's time for me to refreeze. It's getting a little warm in here.
Katrina, any last thing? You look like you wanted to say something.
Oh, you stream sometimes.
Occasionally, but I wouldn't say enough to make it worthwhile.
I mean, some people can turn on your notifications. Might as well.
If you want to watch a very intermittent streaming schedule of about maybe once every 3 months, you can find me at twitch.tv/Undead Norseman. I believe that's where you can find me.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys coming back on again. It's always fun to have you. I know the listeners actually enjoy hearing us all together. So I will hopefully get you guys on a little bit more here.
If we do the watch parties, I think that will be a lot more approachable when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because man, when you take me out of the chamber and you say, "Here's 3 movies," man, that's a lot.
It's just,
it was worth it though.
Wise.
Hey, I watched a body horror movie I wouldn't have watched otherwise. So
there you
was
go.
Good.
See. All right. Well, thank you guys again.
Bob.
Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more from our TeePublic page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.